Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Invincible Season 3, Episode 3. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we had that opening, which I thought was so fascinating. It was was it both of them or was it just one of them? Because I know later on we see like Furnace and that other dude, the lightning dude, who were there during the whole machine head thing of, was it episode 5 of season 1? But I know the dude with the thing on his chest, which that seems to be its own sentient thing. I can't remember if the guy that was with him, the kind of lava guy, like the fire guy, I'm like, I don't remember if he was a part of that or not. I definitely remember the furnace thing or being was, but I don't remember if he was. But yeah, basically it opens to this long, like quiet, like just ambient music sequence, and they're robbing a bank, but they end up getting away because of like bulletproof like disrupts it. But it's like it's that interesting thing, and it kind of plays into this theme of this episode where it's like kind of that element of every life is precious, because you also don't know what people are going through. It's like you see these two people who are struggling, which they're like, all right, we got away from like all that. We kind of, we did what we did to make amends, and so let's go legitimate, and they did, and they tried, but the rent prices went up, work was kind of drying up. They tried to get they tried to have multiple jobs at once, but no one would take them because I'm sure maybe because of their rap sheets or whatever, or just for whatever reason they didn't get hired at the other places, and ultimately because we also find out they're lovers, which I was like, oh, it gives me. If you haven't seen My Adventures with Superman, this is kind of a slight spoiler, but in that series, they Heatwave and Livewire are basically in the same boat where they're still criminals kind of working as a team, and they're lovers. So it's kind of like once you got introduced to this, like the moment they were hinted to, I'm like, wait, are they lovers? And it seems like they are. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so it definitely made me think of the Livewire and Heatwave parallel, especially because that was like literally last year that aired. But yeah, I thought that was so fascinating, just kind of getting that insight. And I guess it plays into like, well, obviously we're picking up with the Titan storyline. We only got a little bit of this episode, but I'm sure we're going to get more of it as the season progresses. But especially probably on their front of things, especially like I said, with all the Titan stuff is about to get expanded upon and stuff. But they're people down in their luck, and I guess they were people for hire. So I guess Titan hasn't felt the need to like bring them back in, because it seems like the only person. Well, because the lightning dude and Furnace showed up later on because they were going to the prison to break out Paul, but they were only doing that because I guess they got hired by Titan. Because I guess the only person that was a part of all that from season 1 that Titan's tight with is Isotope. I guess Isotope's the only one that like he hires out. Like, you're my right hand guy. The others are hired guns. So even though he's all about trying to like piece his community back and take it back, is so that you're not beholden to anyone else, that he wants to try and make things as fair and responsible, take care of not only his family but other people too. So I'm wondering, like, it feels like those storylines will collide, because since there's already such connective tissue. I'm surprised it wasn't already, but I guess like they don't know to reach out to Titan because they don't know about the position he's in, maybe. Whatever the case may be, it's just like, right, they're struggling to make ends meet, and just when push comes to shove, they get evicted, they go back to their criminal ways. And it just kind of showcases not every villain is like this despicable super villain, terrible person or whatever. It's just like some people have their reasons. Push comes to shove, it's that whole thing of like everyone's kind of one bad day can be that one bad day away. It just comes down to how you handle those bad days, because one bad day is enough to push anyone over the edge, but it's like, do you have the tools and the lessons within you to not let that bad day consume you? But it's also like the thing of, but what if you have a string of bad days? That's another thing too. It's like you try to do the right thing, push comes to shove, and you're just kind of screwed over. So you're just like, fine, I'm gonna just go the easy route. And they see like it happens with the dude with the tentacle like thing on his chest. Like, he had saw it initially during the first bank robbery at the beginning of the episode, where he saw that parent and a child and he felt bad. Then Fire Dude saw a child with their parent like while they were robbing the bank the second time and felt bad. But it's like, right, we got to survive too. Not trying to scare anybody. That's probably also thinking about what they want. They probably want to start a family too, but it's just like that's not really possible with living the life that they live as criminals. So But yeah, Mark shows up and busts up the whole situation. But then you have Oliver showing up to back up Mark, and it's like, yo, I want to have your back, because he also knows his brother doesn't have the Guardians or Cecil to back him up. You don't have an entire government organization backing you up. You're going solo. So obviously Oliver's like, yo, no, I got your back. Someone needs to be out there to watch your back. So, but Mark is like, yo, I told you I would train you. Don't rush into all of this. Because once again, he also knows what it's like. Mark's coming from the perspective of, I rushed into this superhero thing because I thought it's all that I wanted, not recognizing, being naive enough to believe I knew the full responsibilities. You know, obviously episode 2, like with the Flaxens, like that, like he took that was a real eye-opener for him, but just everything he's going through made him kind of realize the heavy burden that it comes with being a superhero. And he was so quick in wanting to get that so quickly. It's what he's wanted his entire life. And, you know, kind of like, be careful what you wish for. And he wants his brother, just like his mom, it's like, I want you to take things slow. I want you to be able to enjoy life. He even said it, I think last episode, don't rush it, buddy. Kind of like, you'll regret that you did, because you'll come to see like this isn't all like fun and games like you thought it was. It's not that it's all it's cracked up to be. Yes, you have a responsibility, and yes, you want to live up to that responsibility of helping people, but there's so much weight that comes behind being a superhero that you kind of, when you're young and naive, you don't really understand the grand scale of everything. And just like a child, because he is one, regardless of how rapidly he ages, I mean, that's also another thing, too, of like, yes, his brain is developing, but he's also, like, rapidly aging, too, because it's only 3 months, and he's basically kind of, probably, like, I don't know if they ever say how old he is. He's probably, like, somewhere between, like, 6 and 9, probably. So, like, yeah, it's a lot harder to kind of rein him in when he's just so rapidly growing and aging in front of you. But also, like, because he, you know, you start thinking like, oh, like, I know what's going on. Like, I have these powers. Like, I want to help out. I want to help out my brother. I look up to my brother. I came here just to watch you, but I thought you were in trouble. I thought you might die. So, like, I stepped in. So Mark is trying to, you know, ease him into things, training him up. Mark made sure not even to teach him how to, like, fight. It's like, I want you to teach you how to fly first. His dad kind of taught him all at once, but Mark's trying to slow roll it even more because he wants Oliver to really go at this slow. But then, you know, they get new costumes, and Oliver wants to go by Kid Omni-Man, which Art was like, oh, the kid told me the O stood for Oliver. And Mark has to be like, yeah, you can't go around using that name. Dad's name, like, carries a lot of weight. He's like, yeah, but it's fine. Like, you told me Dad's a different person. It's like, I mean, that's easy for you to say, like, well, Oliver to be like, no, it's all fine. He's like, well, for one, I don't think, you know, you're a child, so you don't fully comprehend all the terrible things that your dad did on this planet, because you weren't alive to see it. Mark witnessed it. Mark heard the words come out of your father's. And I'm sure him and Debbie probably softballed it a little bit of like, Nolan did some terrible things. You didn't go into specifics, obviously, because it's like, who are we to like have that's a conversation for adults. That's not a conversation for a kid to be having. I mean, Mark was 17 and his entire world was raw. That was a lot for even him to handle. Like, who are going to tell like some preteen kid the truth about, oh, your dad was a genocidal maniac that wants to basically kill a whole bunch of people because he felt like humans are lesser than. We'll get to that later. But it's like they probably softballed it. They just said like he did some bad stuff and people won't forgive him. So he doesn't fully grasp how terrible like their dad is, because he also doesn't know Nolan. He probably only knows Nolan through what Mark told him, especially because he's like, but you said Dad is, you know, he's different now. But Mark's like, yes, but people, yes, maybe someday they will forgive him, maybe, but now is not the time. So you can't go around being Kid Omni-Man. So, and Mark himself gets a new suit, kind of a new era for him, kind of like that suit understandably represents a lot because he's carried that suit through a lot. He carried it through like wanting to be like his dad, finding out the truth about his dad, finding out about everything about his dad, his brother, this whole thing with Cecil. So it's like, yeah, fresh new start for you going forward, a new era for Invincible, or Invincible as they call him later on, because they don't think it's the same person. They think it's someone inspired by Invincible. But they bust up the prison break, and Oliver gets hurt, but he's like, no, I'm fine. But Mark is like, no, you could have gotten killed. What are you thinking? You need to listen to me. Don't do that. Like, I told you to stay behind. Like, you can't just like get in the middle of all this. Like, what if you got hurt or what if you got killed? And it's just, Mark even talks about it later on with Eve. It's like balancing everything. I'm trying, like, he's not even, like, there's not even much of a Mark Grayson to balance out. That was already his struggle last season, balancing, season 1 and season 2 was balancing Mark Grayson with being invincible. Now it's a situation of, he's not even he's balancing out Mark Grayson, the son and brother, but also being, and he has to play that role as Invincible as a brother as well. Then he also has the whole situation of him and Eve, where he's trying to be a good boyfriend, good son, and just, he helping raise his brother. Like, it's a lot for him, and he doesn't know how to juggle all of it. And Eve had to tell him, it's like, yeah, but it's like, you have a support system. You don't have to go it alone. Like, just like you're here for us, we're here for you too. So don't feel like you're in this alone. You're not alone. And so ultimately, the Maulers are, I even love that whole situation where that lady was kind of like scared when she was getting coffee and pulled a gun on the guy. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, wait, didn't the same thing happen last season? And they immediately reference it, like when the lizard leaf broke in, because I was like, yeah, wasn't that like a bag of chips situation rather than coffee? But she was like traumatized from it. And the guy's like, it's fine. This is the safest place to be. Lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. And I was like, oh boy. We don't know if they got killed. We know they got like their like, it's a weapon that the Maulers have that basically attacks your neural system that kind of paralyzes you. So I don't think they killed anyone at the base, but who knows? So they bust in, the Guardians show up, get their asses handed to them because it's like, well, there's less of you and these weapons work on all of you. So none of you stood a chance, so that was that. And then so Oliver, it was Invincible that shows up first to deal with them. And then ultimately, Oliver shows up to help Mark. But now Mark's having to deal with both the Maulers, and he's got to make sure that his brother stays okay. They launch a missile because their whole plan is to like activate a large-scale an EMP that would basically wipe out like kind of like the internet. And then they would kind of have like the whole like, they'll have an internet of sorts, so where you have to like go through us and pay us to kind of do anything. And it's like, yeah, we're worse than supervillains. We're businessmen. But yeah, while Mark is dealing with the missile, lo and behold, Oliver proceeds to kill both Maulers. One, and at first I was like, maybe one was an accident. I thought he was going to freak out or something, just like Mark when he snapped to it and was like, oh my God, I killed Angstrom Levy. It's like, nope. Oliver was like, that's what you get. That's the only kind of like, that's the ending a bad guy gets, and immediately goes after the second Mauler. I was like, wow. I mean, that Viltrumite blood runs deep. It does seem like that's a character flaw in all, like it's somewhere in them. Like Mark doesn't look at himself as superior in any shape or form. I mean, we're also talking about Mark being raised, because Mark was raised as a normal human for 17 years. He was expecting his powers to come in, and he got them, sure. But you also have Oliver getting them at such a young age. Oliver's only been raised by his mom and, God, what's the social worker's name? I'm blanking on it. It wasn't Alice or anything like that. It was something with a J, wasn't it? I can't remember now. I know it's she's voiced by Callista Flockhart, but I can't remember the character's name off the top of my head now. But he's only been kind of raised by them for a little over 3 months, So it's a lot that it's a lot in such a short amount of time to kind of have to contend with him rapidly aging and him, thinking he kind of knows better, even though he hasn't even, God forbid, this is him as a kid. He hasn't even gotten to his angsty teenager years yet. So that's also something you have to contend with, because he's probably going to be more insufferable and unbearable as a teenager. But he doesn't think of it's really that bad. And like the rest of the Guardians have to look like, oh my God, that kid murked. It's like, it's one thing because they all witnessed Invincible do his thing. Oh, a lot of them saw Invincible do his thing to those reanimators. But then like seeing a kid do it is another thing when you're just seeing a child covered in blood. And so when Mark comes back, when Cecil's like, hey kid, I'm sorry, they're just shocked. I get what you're doing. And then Mark comes up, he's like, what did I say? Stay away from my family. And then Cecil having to be the petty asshole he is like, oh, I see what you've been training the kid to do. Once again, the stuff he tried to make Mark feel better about it last season about, okay, you did what you had to do. It's understandable. You're not your father. And then throwing all that into his face this season and trying to like twisting the knife even more. And so Mark is upset with his brother because he's like, he doesn't see the issue of what he did. He's like, bad guys won't do anything. If we get rid of the bad guys, we don't have to worry about them coming back to hurt people. That ends up being that obviously like big time superhero like conundrum of, obviously using Peacemaker as an example, being like, yo, you won't have to worry about the Joker if Batman would just put him down permanently. And, Peacemaker being like, oh, I don't have any villains around because all my adversaries, my villains, my rogues gallery are 6 feet under. So it's kind of that mentality, But for Mark, it's like, we don't have that perspective, even if it's villains, because once you cross that line, because Mark knows what we're capable of. He sees it reflected in the Viltrumite Empire. There's an entire species with that perspective, and he doesn't want his brother to grow up with that, to lose his humanity. And it's like, you see your brother potentially not having a humanity versus your father who didn't have any, who is now growing a conscience in humanity. So it is interesting to see both of them on opposite sides of the spectrum. Once again, the complicated thing is Nolan didn't grow up with human love. Oliver is, and so is Mark. So Mark is on the more human side of the spectrum, but he's capable of, tap into that Viltrumite stuff, but it's never been to the degree that his father, the callousness and disregard for life like his dad is. Once again, like that Viltrumite can take over and he can be blinded by rage, but that's also why he's so scared for Oliver to have that perspective. It's like, it needs to make you sick. It needs to make you feel bad. Because if you don't care, you become too much like dad. You sound like dad. And even Oliver's like, what's the big deal? Who cares? Once again, he's young, so and like I said, I don't believe they ever fully expressed the horrible things he did. Because the people your dad killed weren't bad people. Your dad murdered innocent people because he looked at them like they were nothing. And for him, it's like, death is death. People die anyway. People kill each other every day. So like, why does it matter? And, he tries to fly away from Mark. And so later on, they have a conversation with Debbie where Debbie's like, okay, you love me, right? And it's like, yes. He's like, well, what if I die? Like, he's like, no, I don't want you to die. You're my mom. I love you. She's like, but yes, those people out there, they have people who love them too. So you need to be, empathetic and sympathetic enough to know, like, you wouldn't want anything to happen to me. They, so every life is precious. But he's like, well, the Maulers didn't have any friends or people who loved them. It's like, you're kind of missing the point. But he's like, I understand. But she's like, no, I need you to not just say it. I need you to understand. He's like, I do. So he knows he's kind of in the wrong and recognizing the wrong, but it's like, are you really recognizing that you're in the wrong, or you're just placating your mom and Mark just so they will leave you alone? That's also the kid thing to do. Like, okay, I'm gonna say I understand when in actuality I don't. It's hard for him to comprehend, and that's a scary thing considering the powers and considering how powerful the Viltrumites are. Like, Mark is, for, if he really, really pushed himself, he could be the strongest thing on this planet, but he's still not there yet. And Oliver's just kind of the next generation of that. So having all that power comes with, you say it with me now, a great responsibility. Then we have the ending situation, which I thought was so fascinating, where like we had saw it earlier in the episode, like someone was spying on them, and then Mark crushes it. Well, it actually explodes when he grabs it, and it turns out someone was watching him. It was Angstrom Levy, which I was like, interesting. I would have thought all of them were, well, the multiverse is the multiverse. So the question then becomes like, okay, so is this an Angstrom Levy? Because like Angstrom from last season kind of said like he was the only Angstrom Levy with those powers. So either someone like cloned him or made a copy of him or something. So it might not be actual Angstrom Levy. It could be someone possessing his body. We did also have those time travel people who stole the Declaration of Independence last episode. Not this episode. That was episode 1, wasn't it? I believe that's kind of, yeah, I think it's all blurred together, but yeah, from episode 1. So not unless it has something to do with that. Because it's not like every Angstrom in the multiverse is dead. He gathered a good chunk of them and they all went into his mind, but the multiverse is what it is. It's infinite. So it's interesting too, because I would have thought it would have ended with the Angstrom thing, because once again, having heard from people who've read the comics, they made it seem like the Angstrom thing was such a small thing, and like kind of like it was in the show, like it was at the beginning and kind of the tail end of the season, but it was sprinkled in a tiny bit. But for the most part, the Angstrom thing like was kind of a small part in the story, which I think it kind of apparently was like that in the comics. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding. So I don't know if that was just people dancing around the fact this Angstrom comes back, because also there is stuff that is moved around and changed. So it's not like it's a one-to-one for the comic. People have commented on like some stuff is kind of moved out of order and moved up, moved back, or changed entirely. So that is something to keep in mind. So this could be something like, okay, the show is going a direction with this Angstrom stuff that the comic didn't, or the comic did go down this direction and we just have to wait to find out, give let them cook, right? Type of situation to see where it's going. So that's where things currently stand on that front. Some other elements to this episode. I mean, first and foremost, circling back to the Maulers. Are they dead? It seems like it. Because Oliver killed both of them. So I'm like, are they dead in this? Because obviously that's a thing about like, certain villains popping up over and over and over again. I mean, first and foremost, it's not like it's the first time they've killed villains. Like there's the guy that the Immortal tossed into space in season 1 in the first episode, which Mark and the Mars team, like when they were on their way to Mars, like went there, like it saw his body floating in space. So like, there's that line, but it's just still kind of the thing of brutally murdering someone. Like, that line is different for every hero. But Mark is like, we kind of have to be held to a higher standard because of our situation. We can't be killing people because we got to value life, because we get all super okay with killing. That's such a slippery slope for us. So no matter what anyone else does, whatever anyone else's lines are, we can't cross it because we're heroes, but also like we are in a very unique situation where we can't cross that without becoming monsters, or the concern about becoming monsters. Either way, like the whole point of the Maulers is like, right, you need one of them alive to make a copy. So not unless they have some contingency plan that in case they die, there's like some dead man switch that activates and automatically clones them or something like that. So this might be the end of the Maulers. We'll have to wait to see like where that goes. Because every time you think you're done with them, but usually at least one of them survives to kind of keep it going. Just like King Mauler until he got poisoned by the clone. So that whole situation. We also have former team. Obviously, it's Rudy and Monster Girl and Ray and Bulletproof and Rex. I mean, granted, only Rex and Rudy are from team. Everyone else is kind of new. We learned some interesting things about Ray and Rex. Because it's like, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, this is kind of our place. But then Rudy's like, well, actually, it's kind of still in my name or whatever. So, because like Eve was staying here last season. So, but either way, Ray, we find out like she's like the whole joining the Guardians was like the first time she ever faced like supervillains, because she's like, I come from a small town. Her family really leaned into the whole her being a superhero thing. She dealt with kind of small crimes like some bank robbery, some this and that. She's like the nearest supervillain was like 200 miles away type of thing. So she never really had to deal with kind of like the bigger lead type of thing. So it was kind of this was kind of all brand new to her. And, Rex is like, well, at very least you have parents in your life. He's like, mine sold me to the government to be experimented on for a steak dinner. And it kind of like, the way he talked about it made it seem like, oh, like the government's the reason why he has his powers. Because he's like, they did something to my nervous system and then he did his power. So I'm like, either like maybe it was latent inside of him and they awakened it, or just in general, like, no, he was experimented on. So it's like, oh, we both have like effed up circumstances. Because that was also like why Eve and Rex kind of like bonded, is because like, well, he comes from an effed up family situation, so does she, and they kind of bonded over that, I'm sure. Which also, like, we're getting these Rex and Shrinking Ray vibes, because it is that thing of, well, we both went through something traumatic, we both nearly died, and we kind of could have and should have, but we're both still here, so that trauma can bring you closer together. Also, Rex isn't the annoying asshole that he once was. He's an annoying asshole, but not to the extent he was, so he is trying to change it at the very least. So I think that kind of goes a long way. I'm also curious about the little thing that Rudy was making that he didn't want Amanda, Monster Girl, to see. I'm thinking like, it's probably related to what he was working on last season, a means of like making her like situation what it is, where she doesn't have to age or like de-age every time she uses her powers. So I'm assuming it's something like that because he knows that's a touchy subject for her, and he was kind of broaching it last season. He used the wrong words, "Let me fix you." So that's, I can only assume that's what he's keeping from her. Also, we have to always be a little wary anytime Rudy is being very secretive about stuff he's working on, because that's how we got the whole Rudy in the first place. Went from robot to Rudy in the first place. So we have Eve. I didn't talk about it last episode. I might have talked about it. I don't remember. I think I talked about her like wanting to do it, but I don't think I talked about her actually doing it, going to college. And her and Amber link up, which I was like, ooh. And it's like, well, her and Mark are dating now, so it's like she was kind of nervous about telling Amber that, but it's like, no, I don't want like our friendship to kind of get messed up. It's like, but she's like, no, I already knew you guys were dating because William talks to me, which I think is actually really sweet. I mean, that comes with its complications with a breakup, because it's like, oh, are we still friends or not? But I think it's a situation of like, yeah, like I can be friends with both of you, because like the last time Mark probably saw Amber was the season 2 finale when he saw her but she didn't see him. It's like, with the breakup, it's like, cool, like your friends have become my friends, so what do we do? But it's like, yeah, we can still be friends. Who knows like what the future holds for like Amber and Mark going into the future? But it's like, yeah, at least William and Eve are still friends with Amber, and she's moved on. So it's kind of like a, hey, I'm glad you guys worked out. She's like, at least it wasn't the next day that you guys started dating, but it was all, she was like, I figured you guys would eventually get together. And it's like, oh, was it just that obvious to literally everyone but us? And it's like, yeah, it was. William saw it, Amber saw it, like everyone knew, but neither one of them was willing to kind of take that step or kind of recognize it, because both of them were kind of like stifling and kind of pushing down their feelings. But Eve obviously is she kind of creates a situation with her parents, because she's trying to move back in with her parents, because it's like, well, it gets her, I'm sure it makes it easier for her to commute to college, but also it keeps her closer to Mark, now that they're dating. So, and she can't use the teen hideout anymore, which I even love. They're like, what's the new name? And it's like Rex and his Splows, and Rex and the people whose names you don't really need to know or who don't matter. He's like, oh, come on, guys, I'm just telling the name like it is, like letting the name be based around what's the most important factor and thing of this whole situation. But either way, interestingly enough, Eve was able to kind of mend fences with her parents, which is surprising, because every time we've ever seen her dad, he's been nothing but the biggest asshole in the world. Her mom's not the best either. Her mom definitely has issues too. Like she kind of sticks up for Eve a little bit, but even then it's still like, she doesn't kind of go all the way. She kind of half-ass it sometimes, but... So she hasn't always handled things the best way either, but I think for her, she tries to play middle ground a lot. Rather than picking a side, she tries to be middle ground. But Eve, it's like, hey, this is who I am, but I will follow your rules. I will use my powers here, but you have to accept me for who I am. I will still go out there and save people's lives, but I will, like, not use my powers here. Like, either you accept me for all that I am, or this is the last time we'll talk. Like, I want you guys to be in my life, because regardless of my issues with you guys, I still love you, and I know you love me too. Because he loved his daughter, but like her having powers complicated things for him, and he's just very stubborn, and it's just kind of like, he's very like, man, I'm the man of the house, and things kind of have to go my way, yada, 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 blah, 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 right? So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that continues. I think it will probably continue down the route of a very cohesive ecosystem, but we'll see if plot problems arrive, and good on Eve for wanting a relationship with her parents, because it's like, I think for her it's like, regardless of us not getting along, I recognize how, she probably looks at how Mark's relationship with his mom, and Mark has a really good relationship with his mom, and for Eve, it's like, I want to have a good, it's like, it's hard going through life without your parents, and it's like, you shouldn't have to if you don't like if it's avoidable. Like, I mean, once again, which isn't to say everyone should have good terms with their parents. It's like, no, sometimes your parents are complete and utter monsters or assholes. We're talking about those situations, but not everyone's situation is that. Like, you might not get along with your family because like they are very stubborn and stuck in their ways, but there can be a compromise, a middle ground that you can meet. So we'll see how this goes. Like I said, Eve's a lot more forgiving because I would never forgive her dad considering everything he's done and said. He, like I said, been the biggest piece of shit, but we'll see. I brought him up earlier in the episode was the whole Titan situation. We catch up with his circumstances. There was this, what's his name, Mr. Liu. We got introduced to him, like just a quick look at him at the end of the season 1 finale when Mark and Alan were talking. It's like, oh, there's stuff that's coming up, and he was one of the things that showed up. So he belongs to an organization that's called the Order. Machine Head was a part of it, or rather he was just kind of like a lower rung on the totem pole. It's like the Order's the bigger organization, and everyone else kind of has to pay tithes or do their due diligence and kind of understand their place in the pecking order. Titan's not all about that. He kind of wants to just kind of say, screw that, who needs the order? But Isotope is like, yeah, if we don't do what they say, we kind of have to bend the knee a little bit. Because Machine Head was good about that. Because if we don't, you're dead, your family's dead, I'm dead. So, because they want Multi-Paul again, because he's like their best assassin. Like, yeah, but your best assassin got caught up in his like petty revenge. Well, not petty. He thought his sister was dead, and he blamed Rex. To be fair, Rex had nothing to do with your sister dying. He, in fact, helped kill the guy and guys who were responsible for her death. So it's kind of like, I get it. He needed to blame someone. Obviously, Paul's just not a good guy in general. So, but still locked up, never got broken out. But I'm sure that's going to become more and more of an issue, considering Titan's going to keep doing what Mr. Liu wants. But it's like, yeah, kind of made that happen. But, the people you sent after to break Paul out got busted too. So we'll see how that all plays out. Once again, they're kind of all in the same play. That could also be, I don't think it was part of the plan, but it could be a thing of it actually benefits them to be on the inside, but we'll have to wait to see. So where that goes. Like I said, just got the tiniest bit of a catch up with the whole Titan thing. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, because it feels like that's going to be a larger story theme this season, maybe. This is the show that has like so many storylines that can go over, and like it's just a matter of what becomes a bigger storyline, what kind of falls to the background and becomes like a background thing that's happening, what kind of stays at the forefront. I was trying to remember what else happened, but there's also like because I brought up Mark and Eve's relationship. Let's talk about Paul and Debbie, which they're on another date. He didn't think it was going to happen, but it's just kind of like, she kind of got to the point where she doesn't want to lie to him anymore. It's like, it's understandable. Mark went through the same thing with Amber, so it's like, yeah, so Debbie ends up telling him everything, because it's like, right, I want this to kind of continue, but I don't want it to be a lie. You've known me for years, but you don't really know the real me, so she laid it all out. So, wait, that thing that happened in Chicago, yeah, Mark and Nolan, and the other kid from another planet, you're just like, okay. And for him, he bounced, but he was like, no, it's not against you. It's not like, oh my God, that's too much. Like that guy who understandably had his issues because his girlfriend was the Green Ghost and was murdered by Nolan. It's a little different than this guy, Paul, who's known Debbie, who knows her heart, knows who she is. But it's more like I'm just a normal guy who cannot, like, you were dating a superhero, you have superhero stuff in your life. But for Debbie, it's like, no, she needs the normalcy to balance it out. So he knows about Mark. And now Mark's like, wait, you told him without my permission? But Eve had to remind him. It's like, yes, but your mom, after everything that she's done, raising you lost your father, she lost her husband. Like, her entire life was turned upside down. Because also, Mark wasn't there when his mom was going through some dark shit in season 2. He was in college. And if not in college, he was there at on Thraxa while she was kind of piecing herself together in the aftermath of, all that. So he didn't see how bad it got. So, and Eve had to remind him, it's like, right, she deserves happiness, doesn't she? And he goes, right, I'm sorry I acted the way I did with the Paul thing, because you deserve to have someone you can talk to about this stuff. Just like I have Eve, now you have Paul. but she's also like, right, I should have talked to you first before I made that decision. It's like, yeah, it's just everything's good. It's like we both didn't handle the situation the best way we could, but it's about understanding this and finding their way forward through this because it's uncharted territory for everybody. So some very, very interesting developments all around. But at the very least, it's like things are good for now, but it's only a matter of time before shit really, really hits the fan. But for now, we can enjoy the solace of like, hey, Mark and Eve wasn't the greatest first date, and it's a weird date, but for Eve, it's like, oh, I've had worse. So, and things are good between Debbie and Paul, but now Debbie and Mark still have to deal with the whole Oliver thing, even though he said it's kosher, it's all good on that front. We'll see. The Guardians of the Globe have to get their shit together now that they're down quite a few members. They're down, and it's like, they got to compensate for all of that. Obviously, the Rex and the squad who got to figure out who they're going to be and what they're going to do moving forward. Yeah, they're going to do the superhero thing, but like, what's their new identity? Because they can't be teen teams because like, they're not teenagers anymore. So, it's kind of a moot point in that regard. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.